Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Indie Film Cafe. I'm your old pal, the Moo Cow, aka Paul A Presenza, and today I am joined by the coughing
Jonathan Moody.
Outstanding, and we are both joined by
Joe Turek. No coughing yet. Maybe later.
I hope not.
Hope not.
go.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a good sign if that happens.
I know.
Well, we might need some coffins because the movie we are about to watch might just kill us.
Oh, God. I thought you were saying it was another vampire movie or something.
Well, there's sort of a vampire in there, kind of, sort of. You wanted me to get a really stinky movie for our buddy here, Joe Turek, and I think I'm up to the task because we're going back into the way, way back machine, all the way back to 1983 for the legendary, terrible, stinky movie, because it was time, Geek Maggot Bingo from Nick Zedd.
Yay!
Yes.
Oh, man. I've been wanting to watch this
Yes.
movie.
And now I have not heard of it, but I'm sure I'm about to be indoctrinated into the world of it.
Well, he's been talking about this movie for a while, and
Oh, yeah.
sadly,
Oh, yeah.
Nick Zedd is no longer with us this year. He passed away.
Yep. And I have a bunch of Nick Zedd movies. This is the first one, though. To get you guys on your Nick Zedd adventure, you have to start off at the beginning.
I know Gary's sad he won't be joining us for
I
this.
know. He loves or hates this movie.
Well.
And to give you an idea, there's no geeks, nor maggots, nor bingo in this film.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Absolutely. But there's just about everything else you can possibly think of. But we will come back and talk about all of that goodness right after some music. And now we have returned from watching the film where we can now discuss the movie Geek Maggot Bingo. Gentlemen, please enlighten me. What did you think of this movie?
I think you just did a really good impression of Dr. Frankenberry, from this movie. Yeah, wow, that was good.
Thank you.
I think you could have fit. Oh, it actually was better probably than what some of that stuff we saw in there. But
I know, like you could have written the movie, like
Wow.
I think a child could have written the movie better. I don't know.
What did you guys think? Joe, come on, what did you think?
Well, there was always this running joke that you guys were going to try to. I've been lucky. I've been lucky in the past with some of these. So I think my luck's run out.
Finally has.
It finally has happened.
Yep.
But I mean, I'm here, and it's like we didn't even have. It's like Continuity Monkey took a vacation on today.
He was too ashamed to show up.
TNA Monkey was around, but he was grossed out, I think, and he left.
Yeah, there was some stuff in that was
There was TNA.
There was TNA and D.
And Dangle.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there was a lot.
There were bits and pieces. And,
Bits and pieces.
bits and pieces.
It's pretty much what you can say about this whole movie. There was
Kibbles
bits and
bits.
pieces.
Kibbles and bits.
Oh, Lord.
I don't even know where to start, though. Really.
Well, I guess we'll...
You're just going to go into some background.
Yeah, I'll do some
Okay.
background. So, Geek Maggot Bingo, 1983, Nick Zedd, also known as the freak from Suckweasel Mountain, just like the Francis Ford Coppola movie. I'm kidding. By Nick Zedd, he's an artist, filmmaker, writer, painter, and he came from that sort of underground New York 70s, early 80s thing that spawned the likes of, Richard Kern, Lydia Lunch, just a whole bunch of different people. Jim Jarmusch, Abel Ferrara.
You're saying good people. You're putting
Yeah.
good names and you're mixing it up with Nick Zedd.
Yeah, I know. So Nick Zedd, I'm just saying he came from that group. He's part of that underground new wave scene. His thing is that he created what he calls the cinema of transgression, which is to say, puts weird shit out there to freak you out. So that's kind of his claim to fame. And that's most of his movies. This is his first, and
This was his first.
yeah, this is where it all begins.
So and it just goes downhill from there.
Downhill from there.
So it wasn't his last. I mean, there
Oh
wasn't.
no!
There was.
Oh
There was
no!
he had a handful of artistic endeavors after this.
You could say that. Artistic of a kind.
Art is subjective, I guess. Yeah.
In this case, subjective to the wallet, because clearly there was no money spent on this whatsoever.
Yeah.
This was a movie with painted sets, painted props, painted telephones. They actually tried to use the one.
I know, and then they're like, "Oh, it's unplugged,"
Then they said it didn't. They knew why it didn't work because it wasn't plugged in.
Not
the fact that it was a cardboard
painted cardboard.
Right, but they try to justify whatever. Yes. Oh my God.
David the Rock Nelson at least had a real telephone.
Yeah, that's true. He never had painted sets that made no sense whatsoever.
No.
If he went outside, he went outside. If he went in his house, he went in his house. There was no painted set, which makes no sense whatsoever.
So, the movie is basically kind of like Frankenstein meets Dracula, kind of like some, like you were saying, some of the Universal horror things.
Well, I mean, they had Frankenstein, which was Frankenberry, which must have been after the Frankenberry cereal came out. He was just like, that'd be funny to have Dr. Frankenberry or whatever.
Because it's funny.
Because he thinks it's funny, but it's like, okay. There's no real joke with it or anything. It's just like, oh, he's called Dr. Frankenberry. Then they've got, you called him Quasimodo. So they have a hunchback. They have a Dracula. They have...
Scumbellina, the vampire queen.
Well, yeah, so she's sort of like the Dracula kind of character, I guess, or whatever. They have a Renfield, who is the guy with the
gecko.
That's the Hunchback.
That's the Hunchback.
So I'm thinking the Renfield was the other guy, the other vampire.
Oh, Flavian.
Yeah, Flavian. And so they have all like the mixtures of the Universal horror films
With a cowboy
thrown in. Just why not? At that point, they were just fucking around anyway. And then they have a creature like they have the Frankenstein monster, which was the
formaldehyde man.
Formaldehyde man. So they had everything, and the kitchen sink.
Right.
But the kitchen sink is painted.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. They had to have a painted kitchen sink.
So a lot of these filmmakers were inspired from the early mid-70s Andy Warhol, who put out a whole bunch of really weird stinkers. And we are going to do some Andy Warhol movies. We just haven't gotten to it yet because I have this giant list of movies.
Yeah.
Well, Flavian has sort of a Warhol type of the way the hair was. The white hair over top of the... You can see the dark roots, his hair sticking out from underneath there. But Andy Warhol.
It was just
he had an Andy Warhol look to him. Yeah.
And Andy Warhol's movies were known for their artistic use of not having any money whatsoever and just kind of throwing a bunch of weird shit up there.
Is that really artistic use, or is that just poor?
Yeah, pretty much just poor.
I mean, that's the thing I don't understand about this sort of thing is like. And it goes with art too. Like when people just put finger paintings and they make this little crappy thing and then they say, this is the new art, like what? I don't get it. Like I really don't. I don't understand any of that.
It's a lot of it is kind of a send up of that kind of thinking. But it's also a lot of, this is what we've got, so we're going to go with it,
That seems to be about it.
Nick Zedd, he's done a number of other things. He's also done, They Eat Scum is the one that I wanted to show you guys, but that's a tiny bit more polished, so we'll save that one for another season.
Oh, yeah, because, once again, we had mentioned that the whole idea was that Paul was supposed to pick something really bad, really terrible, and stinky, and so to poor Joe, because Joe has never gotten it before.
You insisted.
I know, I said it because Joe has always said he's always gotten good movies. We had Game Box and No Retreat, No Surrender wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it was bad. And then, so he hasn't. And I think, were you in season 3 at all?
There was one other one I remember. I can't remember what.
I mean, you've heard, I'm sure, Moody talk about some of the movies that I've shown him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you were a little bit curious.
Yeah, and he missed out on Neil Breen. This is your.
It was time, especially since it turned out that Nick Zedd passed away in February.
Yeah, we talked about that this year. Is when we found out he passed away. I said you got to do.
So yes,
you got to do Geek Maggot Bingo.
In memoriam of Nick Zedd. God bless him. He did his thing, and he just didn't care what anybody else thought.
Other than maybe Joe Lynn or Ashley, who could you show this to?
It's hard to say. But in addition, he made a number of things. Then he got up with somebody by the name of Reverend Jen Miller, and they made a bunch of weird, crazy stuff. And she's a lot of fun.
Weirder than this?
Yeah.
So wait, she wasn't in this.
No.
She didn't work
comes
on this.
later on. And then he continued to make stuff. I have some of his later films. One is called War is a Menstrual Envy. I showed that to Gary. War is Menstrual Envy. Yeah. It's part of this whole transgressive cinema thing that he likes to do. In your face, crazy stuff.
And then the titles have to be weird or out there or whatever.
It's just the thing. So it just goes to show you, Geek Maggot Bingo. There's no geeks, there's no maggot, there's no bingo, but it's a title to sort of get you thinking about stuff or to sort of
there was Geeko. So that's the only connection I can put in. There's a guy named, his real name was Gecko, apparently, but the guy kept calling him Geeko.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you argue about somebody's name? Like, if I called you Pool.
That was the young,
and you're like,
the young
my name's
Frankenstein thing.
If I'm like, I called you Pool, and you're like, my name is Paul, I'm not going to go, no, it's Pool.
Some people might. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about the people that were involved in this film. So, Dr. Frankenberry was played by Robert Andrews. He's our dinner theater actor extraordinaire. The guy that I kind of imitated a little bit, although I did no justice to his acting skills whatsoever.
His amazing acting skills.
Amazing. Over the top, scenery chewing.
And he had some... He went off into some different monologue. I mean, he was just going on in tangents and using all sorts of big words that he could, and it just...
And I don't think any of it sometimes even made sense. It just was all thrown in.
Drugs are bad, Mkai. You shouldn't do drugs, Mkai. Yeah, I don't know. We couldn't figure out if this was the script that he just memorized and just vomited back, or he was just making up shit as he was going on.
There was one time in particular I did see him look down, and it looked like he was looking at the script.
That was at the beginning, I think.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
And I never saw him do it again. You said he does it again, but I never saw him do it again.
Well, it's hard to tell because you really can't see a whole lot of it.
Yeah, that's true.
The lighting is so poor. Sometimes it's like lit by a flashlight, and that's about it.
And sometimes the lighting being bad was a good thing. I don't know if you wanted to see what could be in the what was actually in the light. We might not have
hear you. But he's playing this sort of dime store Bela Lugosi mad scientist.
What did you call him? Something the theater
dinner theater
Bela Lugosi. Which was true.
Like way over the top.
But he only did one and done for whatever reason. This is his only
film.
IMDb credit. That I
know.
Man.
Infamous, if he's still alive, we got to get him.
Seriously, absolutely. He was just amazing. Hey, just if he had to memorize all that and spout it out in character, even if it's crazy and over the top, I'm still impressed by that.
Yeah.
And he stayed pretty much in character.
That was one thing you were saying during it, Jonathan, about how the character, he stayed in character. And through the entire film, there was the characters became something.
Yeah, the characters were characters, and that's what I said. Because, like, every person was a specific thing, and they absolutely went with it.
Right.
There was a cowboy, there was a doctor, there was a Igor, there was a all that shit, and so that was the plan,
Right.
But
and you have to wonder, is his performance, how much of that is Nick Zedd, and how much of that is Robert Andrews? Or is it together? Did he just say, "Go crazy, folks," or
Well, there is one time that the cowboy asked for some directions.
Yes.
So maybe some of the time
he did say something like, "Nick, direction, please."
Yeah,
he was falling down into the background.
Because it was like. But it was so funny because the character was supposed to be drunk, I guess. Yeah. And so it was just like, okay.
And that brings us to our second actor. That is Richard Hell playing the Rawhide Kid. Now, Richard Hell was a punk musician and singer and bass player actually, from the original punk scene in the 70s. So he was in television. He did his own band called Richard Hell and the Voidoids. And he showed up in a couple of films, and he actually pops into a Hollywood movie. He's actually in Desperately Seeking Susan, of all things. I know. Because I believe that movie was shot in New York, and he was part of that.
And that was a punk scene movie,
there was,
right?
Yeah, there was kind of a punk thing going on with that too.
Yeah.
So he is definitely involved in all that, and his bands were really good.
I saw that so many years ago, but I do remember it being like her dressed up like a punk kind of thing. So.
Right. And I believe now I think he's a writer and
he was a cowboy.
Yeah, he's a cowboy now.
He plays a cowboy.
He was a cowboy.
The whole rarn tootin', root shootin', here's rope up the doggies kind of thing.
And with those little cap guns.
Yeah, and the whole time he's just like, saying, he's saying all these cowboy lingo, and you were like, you looked at it, it's like, as cowboys always say, all these, what were they, like?
Just total cliches.
I don't know, every darn tootin', blah, blah, blah.
You got a mosey over here.
Mosey on down, and,
And he had his lasso going.
That's right, constantly.
And he was not very good at lassoing.
Well, he got Geeko Gecko pretty good.
He did, but then he tried to get the formaldehyde.
He had trouble with
took a few times.
He had trouble with the two-headed formaldehyde.
Yeah. He tried that a couple times, but didn't really work out,
Then we have Scumbelina the Vampire Queen, played by Donna Death, who was the executive producer and who did a lot of different stuff on the
caterer.
film.
Yeah, she's the caterer.
She was the caterer. She did a whole bunch of extra things. So
yeah, she was also like there was like 4 lighting people or something, or whatever.
4 different flashlights.
Yeah, probably.
But it's funny because she does her whole thing mute, so she doesn't actually say any dialogue in the entire thing. Her powers, quote unquote, come from her moving her hand around.
Which was very Vampira in Plan 9, right? Yeah. Like, Vampira didn't say a word, and she did a good job. So I think it would have been interesting had they gotten Vampira to play that role, because Vampira was still around.
I'm just curious if it was the same reason. I think Vampira just didn't want to say anything because she wanted to have as little to do with the production as possible.
Well, no, but it shouldn't be the same thing, because Donna put like a lot of work into this movie. You know what I mean?
She probably put the $20 that cost all the props.
Right. Well, I mean, she was executive producer, so she paid for something, or whatever.
The painting for the set design.
Painting for the set designs, or the actual really cool death scenes.
I know that she was one of the painters who painted the sets. Okay. So, yeah.
Her and Formaldehyde Man.
Yep.
Her and Formaldehyde Man did the set.
They did spend a little bit on the skull scene towards the end. I mean, that's probably was they did a little bit on that.
And don't forget the bat on a string.
Bat on a string. I love that.
You get to see that a few times. That was fun.
Oh.
And then we have Buffy, played by Brenda Bergman. What did you think of Buffy, the doctor's daughter?
We saw a little bit too much of her.
We saw her boobs, her butt, and her bush. The bees.
Pretty much all the time.
Yep, all of it. Yep. She was in the buff.
She had this weird kind of acting ability where she was like, someone would hold your nose, and she would just do this twitchy, weird kind of performance. It was just very strange.
I mean, look, she was not ugly or anything. Like, she wasn't like, you know what I mean?
She's grotesque.
I don't think so. I didn't think she was that terrible.
Way too much makeup on.
That's true. She did put too much makeup on.
But was the makeup her, or was it that was she told to do that?
I think that was probably part of the character.
We were talking before about how sort of it was John Waters-like, and everything, Pink Flamingos-ish. And I kind of got a little bit of a divine sense from her, even though she was a real woman, that played it. Like, just kind of this, like, she was supposed to be this sort of...
I believe she was supposed to be over the top.
Yeah.
And over the top is definitely what she was.
Yeah, well, it looks like she was pretty tortured on the set. I mean, from all the different... whether it was Gecko sniffing up on her, touching her backside.
Or her father throwing her in the freezer.
As an actor, I didn't think she was that bad. I mean, I found her twitchy, strange, nasally performance odd, but she was okay. I was believing her as the daughter, and she was all right, I thought.
Yeah.
In this production, she probably, you would say she fit into that production.
I don't believe she ever did anything else, like most of the people involved in this. which is kind of strange. I'd love to know more about her, so someday I'll do some research.
Well, on the IMDb, it actually has a picture of her.
Yeah.
I mean, versus I think there's only one or two of them that have pictures, and the rest of them there's no pictures for. So.
Then we have her lover, Flavian, the one who gets turned into, has the stupid wig and gets turned into a vampire. He's played by Gumby Spangler, and I'm almost positive that is probably not a real name.
Really? You don't think Gumby Spangler? That is weird, though, because, like, later, there's another Spangler that became very famous, the 1984. So, 1982, you said this was?
They ripped off Nick Zedd.
So are you saying Reitman and them ripped off Nick Zedd?
Go.
Possibly?
Dan Aykroyd. I mean, it's Ghostbusters was New York. Right. I mean, so who knows?
The oozing out of the eyes and stuff of that skull thing and...
Maybe I don't know.
But he's another guy that I know nothing about. Of course, if we ever found out his real name, he might turn out to be somebody, but I don't know. I thought was the worst actor of the bunch, though. He was just bad.
He was bad, but
just very flat delivery.
Thank God he wasn't really in it much. Honestly, that sounds terrible, but I just was glad he wasn't in it a lot. He was in it when he needed to be. But then he was saying so many odd things. You were pointing that out. Like he would be like
a lot of odd lines.
He would be like, and then I leave.
Yeah, and now it's time to leave.
And you were like, what?
Why did you say
Why did you just say that? Like, why don't you leave?
Nobody does that.
Like, nobody just tells people what they're about to do before they do.
Now I will scratch my ear.
And now we will continue the podcast.
I know. It's just so weird. So, yeah, he gets a lot of strange throwaway lines, and just his flat delivery makes it stick out like a sore thumb even worse.
And he stared at it, he stared at the camera sometimes, sort of had movement towards it. It was just like...
And his mouth was always open.
Yeah, it was a bit odd.
No, it was strange.
Yeah. Oh, and let's not forget when he's getting attacked. He's like, no, no, oh dear, oh. Yeah, it was bad.
It was terrible. He was the worst. Yes. I agree.
Let's see. Then we have Dean Quagmire, the guy in the beginning. He turns out to be Flavian's father.
Which we didn't know anything about.
He's played by Jim Giacomo.
And he sort of annoyed me because he was like, I saw my son in your backyard in the woods, and then he disappeared. I'm like, why didn't we see that? Like, why tell us this?
It's too expensive to show.
What? No! Go out and show it. That's easy shit,
They didn't even... Well, New York City, so there are no woods unless you go to Central Park, and they probably couldn't
They already had the painted cardboards for those.
Right.
But
so
I'm just annoyed.
The woods was just painted shit.
I know. I guess, yeah. You see, this goes back to in colony territory where they had woods, but they just made fake woods, or whatever. I mean, you can go into the woods and
it's free.
It's free.
Well, yeah, you had the fake woods where you had the tree that fell over or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, why do you do that?
Duct tape and cardboard.
Well, I mean, and especially when those fall over and it looks fake from that, why don't you just go in the woods and just shoot? I mean,
I would think that Nick Zedd would tell you that this is all part of his master plan as being this transgressive horror film, but I'm thinking now it's more along the lines of this is what they could afford.
They can't afford to go in the woods? I don't get it.
Well, there are no woods in New York City, like I said, so unless it's Central Park, and I think you got to have permits to shoot there.
God, that's right.
Well, they could have just ran over to Jersey for an afternoon or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just outside the city limits or something.
There are trees elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So you could take a day and just go out there, shoot this, second unit or something, and then come back.
But I think there was only one or two scenes that actually was outside of a building. Because they came outside the one shot, it got so bright, and it was just like, whoa.
Oh, God, yeah.
Unless every other time they'll just show a painting of whatever we're going to. Here's the castle that this guy lives in, apparently, and whatever, know.
It opened with the showing of the one house or something, or the one where the two guys met and just was talking, and it was just like, with the best actor of them all, with that cat.
With the cat is the best actor.
Got put in that bag though. It was kind of brutal how they
poor kitty.
Poor cat.
Then we have the monster Formaldehyde Man, played by Tyler Smith, who he ended up doing a lot of the paintings and a lot of the props and stuff like that. And apparently, he actually had a little bit of a career. He did set art and props for things like he was in Sid and Nancy and did some of the work for that.
That makes sense.
Some stuff for School Days. I think he did some sculpting for that.
School Days, was that the Spike Lee?
Yeah.
Well, that's New York, so
that was New York.
Tales from the Dark Side. Like, he did some work for them.
Okay.
The one with
Is he still alive? Is he still kicking?
I think so.
Okay. Cool. Well, good for him.
So yeah, but I think I think that was his only acting, quote unquote, appearance. Then we have Zachary. That even Moody knew who Zachary was.
I knew who he was. I wasn't sure what he looked like or whatever. I've heard of him, and stuff. So, but he was supposed to be in that Dr. Horror's Erotic House of Idiots, and we talked to Debbie Sean about it. She was supposed to be in that, but there's somebody he wasn't able to, so they got somebody else last minute, and that's why certain things happened in that movie. But so Zachary, has sort of had a career for these B movies, hosting.
Right.
And he was sort of, I viewed him in this movie as sort of the Criswell,
Yes.
right? He was the person who introduces the movie, and then, we see the movie, and then he ends it. But he also was in the middle of the movie. He popped in and was like, I think he said, is it over yet or something,
Wasn't he dozing off or something?
He's the one with the wonderful drool cup that he has tied to his face.
Drool cup.
Because that's what you do. You go to a movie, you get a drool cup, and which is like a little plastic or a little paper Dixie cup.
That with the strings wrapped around you and then put on your mouth,
right?
In case you drool.
Well, I get in this type of movie, you sort of just become mind numb at times, maybe you're just expecting just to
either that or huge amounts of drugs were needed to be ingested in order for you to.
So maybe people were drooling. I don't know.
But in addition to being the quote unquote host of the film. Zachary actually, he shows up at a few things. We were doing Basket Case for our Patreon cast, and he's not in that, but he does show up in several Frank Henloper's films.
Okay.
I wonder if does he show up as that type the character he is in this, that type of midnight host, or is he actually in as a role? That'd be interesting to know.
I actually remember, but I'm almost positive it's something similar because clearly his acting range is minimal at best.
His acting range is playing himself and
much.
stuff, and he does a great job.
He found his shtick.
He was just fun. It was because he's just riffing on the movie in the beginning, and whatever. You know what I mean?
It's just talking about bits and pieces and then just laughing maniacally for things that really aren't very funny.
Well, I think the laughing also fit with Zedd's pull and pan or pull and push.
Oh God,
zoom in and zoom out and in and out of focus. It's I asked them after about 10 minutes if this DVD came with motion sickness pills.
Yeah,
because it was a little awkward.
It's a 16 millimeter film. So it is dark and grainy, and I'm telling you, man, shooting those kind of movies, you got to have the lighting down right, because if you don't, it's going to look like exactly what you just saw. And so that's why it was such a big deal for the underground cinema organizations out there when digital filming came along, because it just meant that you could do stuff like this and have it actually look good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It actually looked clear. You could see things. But before that, you saw all the splotches and the cuts and all the just the shitty 16 millimeter film that was being used, and the editing. Oh Lord, the editing was just terrible.
Well, it was neat to see some of the splotches and the stuff that popped up. You could tell it was a film. From that, the grain and all that other stuff. Because you don't really see that anymore. Everything's all digital and everything's all clean and everything's all, So going back and looking at a movie like this, you're like, oh my God, that's actually kind of cool. That's kind of neat.
It's funny because I suspect that if a digital technology had been available, Nick Zedd would have turned it down. He would have said, nope, I want to use this.
I want to use this terrible, 16 millimeter, shit, because
it's part of the motif.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, when was the last movie he made? Do you know?
Oh, it would have been 2008, 2009, something like that.
So mini DV or so, digital was starting to starting to sort of come.
I think it was
into.
Werewolf Bitches from Outer Space, which we're gonna do. We're
Werewolf
gonna do that.
Bitches from Outer Space.
Yeah.
He's got some great titles. I'm not gonna lie. Even Geek Maggot Bingo is.
Just you wait till I show you some of the Reverend Jen shorts. They're so much fun.
Well, you said earlier that Geek Maggot Bingo was not like there was no geeks, there was no mag, and there was no bingo. However, bingo is typically used for those, 60s style beach movies, beach blanket bingo and stuff like that. They don't play bingo in those movies. There's no bingo, but it's just
a fun word.
It's just a fun word to use, and I think that was the feel at times of like what he was trying to accomplish in some way, is that feeling of a fun, goofy movie where you're not taking yourself too seriously.
Right. Well, I got the feeling, like I said, I know he wanted to be the next Andy Warhol. I think he was shooting for something kind of like Andy Warhol with a little bit of Jim Jarmusch or some of these other guys in there. Richard Kearns, perhaps, but ended up being more like Andy Milligan, who is known for making piss-poor, dirt-poor movies in the 70s and early 80s in New York City, and that's kind of where he ended up, or our Alien Beasts guy.
Well, that's a dude who did things in his backyard,
right?
With his friends, kind of like this, I guess.
This didn't even have a backyard; it was a basement. This is like shooting in your basement. You have to make all these sets.
I'm surprised the mom, was it Nick Zedd's mom didn't come out and go, honey, what are you doing, Mom? Cut. Because
we did hear he wouldn't. He just let it keep it in there, probably.
Yeah, we did hear him yell action. At one point. So
yeah, it's technically it's bad. It's rough. It's
I'm wondering if the style though, because there was a few times I was like, pan over, follow the action a little bit, because the one guy was talking and Frankenberry was talking and we couldn't even see what he was talking about,
right.
See him while he was talking.
Yeah, nobody was in focus, nobody was in frame. That's all part of the DIY punk ethic that sort of came out in the 70s, go out and make your own damn movie, and it doesn't matter how good it is because you've made it yourself and you
Trauma way of making a movie.
Right.
That was, Trauma came after this, I think, right? Because Trauma, I think, was
in the
80s.
It came after, yeah.
Yeah, it came after this. So, this is something that Trauma would have probably liked.
What was it 82 that was Toxic Avenger?
Yeah, it's right around that time.
Yeah, around that time. Wow. So, yeah. So, I'm surprised Trauma didn't pick this up,
Oh, I don't know. I think even Uncle Lloyd would have looked at this and said, yeah, no, pass.
Well, yeah, that's true. They didn't even really care for Cannibal the musical until
I'll tell you what,
success.
If we manage to get Lloyd Kaufman on our show, and God, I hope we do, I would love to ask him. I'm sure he knows who Nick Zedd is. I'm sure he's seen the movies. Nick Zedd may not have wanted to have it distributed like that. He may have just said, I want to keep this as an art piece.
Well, he's New York, and so is Trauma's New York. So I'm that's why I'm saying, I'm surprised Uncle Lloyd wasn't like, Nick, you're terrible, but you're terrible the Trauma way, or whatever.
Yeah. There's probably some behind the scenes. They might have known each other. They might not have got. Who knows?
It's a fascinating idea. That period in the 70s and early 80s in New York City, there was just a real flowering of different stuff. Most of it good, some of it kind of crappy, but it's a lot of interesting stuff. And I don't know. I get the feeling Nick Zedd probably would have thought that even Trauma would have been too commercial for him.
Really? You'd be like, yeah, no, never mind.
I get that feeling, yeah.
No,
he
Trauma.
was very, very much an independent person, wanted to do his own thing. Whether it was good or not was immaterial.
Yeah. And it couldn't be on like late night USA stuff because of the nudity and stuff, so it wouldn't fit that.
Well, in New York,
they would have to trim some.
Back in the day, you could probably get it on public access TV, on UHF. But, I don't know, not today. Netflix isn't going to show this.
Tubi might.
Tubi's
been very weird about their movies. They've been taking pretty much whatever right now. Mm-hmm. So
well, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with all of Nick Zedd's films now that he's passed away. I don't know if that
who owns the rights.
Yeah, if the rights have passed on to somebody else. Like I said, Jen Miller was involved in a lot of stuff later. I don't know if he was involved with her. They were together for a while.
Okay.
I don't know whether.
See, I'm thinking Donna Death was right before this, and then like they were dating, and then you don't know, and nobody. I mean, unless it's like been documented somewhere or whatever, we won't know. But that's my only guess because she did do a lot, and unless like. Usually when there's a guy and a girl doing like all the work and everything together, it's usually that they're dating, you know, or something, or there's something going on. Sometimes no, whatever, but you know, you never know.
But I don't know whether you noticed, but when it was going through the credits and it showed like the copyright, it said 1982, 1983. So my feeling is this was probably shot during 82 and it was finally put together and released in 1983. So that means this was around the same time as, like I said, Toxic Avenger, also Basket Case. And we're talking about the same locations and same people and same vibe that's going on, this sort of seedy, scuzzy New York City sort of thing that was going on at the time.
But it shows you what talent can do.
Well, it shows you what people who want to make this thing will go out and accomplish.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
whether they've got the money or not.
Because you look at somebody like Frank Henenlotter, and you've got somebody like, you know, Nick Zedd, and there's definitely a load of, like, you can tell Frank knows what he's fucking doing with film. Like, he knows how to shoot a film, he knows how to direct, he knows how to get the actors to whatever.
It's a weird, stinky movie, but it's well done.
Yes, exactly. It's weird. It's out there. I don't know if you've seen Basket Case.
Years ago, back in my Blockbuster days.
Yeah, so it's a weird movie, but at least it's got some, you know, like it's really well done.
Does it have some of the Hollywood conventions like steady camera work and editing and music and stuff like
exactly.
that?
You can see things, you can hear things.
But that's one thing this didn't have. I don't want to necessarily say that as an insulting thing towards it.
No,
maybe this is just the style that Zedd had, and that he really it's just his vision. And if that's the case, that's
well, Cheap and Shitty is definitely part of his vision. So there you go.
Yeah, it's well, you know, and there's a lot of filmmakers today that still can't seem to figure out sound and you know, we can't see anything or whatever, you know.
It interests me because it is very similar to Alien Beast. I know you haven't seen that, but that's a weird, terrible, stinky, awful, poorly produced film. But at the end, it's got this really weird, almost psychedelic claymation ending that was like, wow, if the movie had been all about this, I'd have had a much different, you know, view of it. Similar in this film where that whole thing with the skeleton and the special effects where the stuff's coming out. I mean, it looked terrible, but at least some effort and money was put into those effects. So that was
my only problem with that,
Tyler Smith.
My only problem with that scene was that it went on a little too long.
Oh yeah, well.
And I think a lot of some of that stuff was padding to make it to an hour and 14 minutes. You know, because that's probably, you know, hour 10 minutes was probably the time that they had to have for a feature, so they had to make it as long as they possibly could. I'm kind of glad it wasn't longer, honestly.
Oh yeah, well, and most of Nick Zedd movies tend to be less than an hour.
Oh, wow.
Like a lot of amateur, filmmakers that we covered. But he does have several longer features, and this is one of them. This is his first one, and the one that he'll be most famous for.
Really, you think so? You think this is the one people remember?
I think so.
And by?
Yeah. Well, looking at the DVD, it didn't look like there was a commentary. It'd be kind of interesting to hear him talk about just from his perspective.
I think I saw an interview with him on YouTube or something. So I was like, because you know, when you said Richard Hell, I really thought that was Nick, because I remember Nick having this like long brown hair, looking very punk-like, you know, like what the 80s punk scene looked like, Joey Ramone type look to him.
Well, it's funny because Richard Hell, in addition to playing all these punk bands, he's kind of insisted that he's the guy that sort of established the look of the whole punk scene with the weird hair and all that. So that's
probably
debatable,
was.
maybe, I don't know, you know. But that's one of the things that he claims.
Oh yeah, so people go around and they're like, "Oh, I want to be just like Richard Hell."
Well, there was a couple of the musical points in the film where they started to go into a little bit of a rock thing, and I was like, "Oh, this is good," and then it just cuts.
Yeah,
and
Right.
it was like, it only played for a few seconds and it was gone. It was
Yeah,
like,
you're right. You got excited about
I was
that,
like,
didn't
"Oh, I
you?
like this." Gone.
Yeah.
and it had no coherent flow in my mind, and that's where I had no experience with this type of
Movie?
Right.
this type of cinema that I'm used to a little bit more of a continuous narrative flow and some of the more Hollywood conventions, if you will.
Well,
this
it's
has a little bit
because
different.
most of the other ones are done by people who knew what they were doing.
Right. See, you haven't hung out with Paul enough. Where Paul, this is Paul's thing.
Oh,
Paul
yeah.
knows these movies.
Oh yeah.
Well, I kind of joked a few times about, well, you haven't. I've been lucky, and you haven't really. So I think it was sort of a badge of honor to say, okay, well, it's time for me to.
It's
to
time.
fully-
You're
fully-
now
Step into the
indoctrined
deep end.
into the thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes
One
we
of us.
throw
One of us.
sometimes we throw people like Angel Bradford. She
Oh,
got
yeah.
the carpet monster movie. What is it?
Creeping Terror.
Creeping Terror, and that's a rough one to watch. I still think it's a lot better than fucking which Paul thinks it is, but
Oh,
whatever.
It's terrible,
You know.
but it's fun.
But it's fun, you know.
Yeah, well, Angel Bradford's a gritty chap. I knew I could throw her in the deep end and she'd swim just fine.
Yeah, and she did. And she actually wanted more, so that's good.
I know.
That's
We gotta
always
get her
fun.
back.
Well, you can get her on the other one of these films,
I'm
possibly.
dying to hear what she would have to say about this. Just Jen would I'd have had so many bruises on my shoulder from her punching me.
Actually, you know who would have loved it? Kate Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Yep.
Yep.
Or Rebecca Reinhart.
Yeah.
Those two would if those two watched this movie, they would like fucking fall in love.
I was definitely thinking Kate would like this one. So I don't know. Maybe when she comes up, we can
do a Patreon only at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah, she would love it.
Is that reason for you to watch it again?
It's okay. You won't have me. I'll leave.
I love showing it to folks who have never seen it, never heard of it, and have no idea what to expect.
Look, this is a terrible movie, but I've seen worse in a way. Like, well, you showed me worse. I've sat here for worse movies. With that being said, this is still fucking terrible. Like, this is not, good at all. Like,
No, there's nothing good.
I don't think there's anything
about
redeeming
this.
about this movie.
No.
Well, you said this is the first time you watched it in 30 or so.
Well,
a
Hasn't
while.
been that long.
It's been a few. It's been 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with Gary? Was that the last person you
I
watched it with?
think he was the last person I tormented with this.
I'm sure he had a few
He's
humorous
used to-
comments about.
He's slogged through some of the worst ones with me. So
Joe Lynn said that her boyfriend had got tortured by you on a movie or whatever. You brought Sex Squatch
Yeah,
over
I know.
and stuff. If you had brought this over, they would have just her boyfriend would have been like, you can't hang out with that
it's
guy
funny.
anymore.
I brought Wang Wang, and Wang Wang's adorable. It's a fun little movie. And then I went a little far with the Sex Watch. That was immediately being pushed in the deep end.
That would be like me bringing in Ski Wolf,
Yeah.
to these people. Or any Chris Seaver movie. It's like, you got to be on the
I've done
careful.
that. I actually had a couple other friends that I introduced, and that was the first thing I showed them. And yeah, they never wanted to see any of the movies ever again. Scared them away forever.
You scarred these poor
I
people.
think so. But Sex Squatch is like, that's Citizen Kane compared to this. I mean, really.
So it's funny, we sort of told story bits and stuff about this movie, but we didn't go into the story, and I was just thinking about there is no story.
Not really.
There's nothing really, we can't really dive deep into it, because really the story is this mad scientist guy, Dr. Frickenberry, wants to, he's experimenting, he's doing these weird experiments or whatever it is. Daughter Buffy doesn't like it. What was her name?
Scumbelina.
Scumbelina. She starts turning everybody into vampires.
As you do.
And then they need something to destroy the vampires. So
he changes his experiment to create
Formaldehyde Man, because I guess formaldehyde destroys vampires. I don't know.
In the meantime, there's a cowboy. I guess they need to take his essence and put it into Formaldehyde Man.
I guess
I missed that too. What
I don't think there was. I think there was just I thought he was going to be Formaldehyde Man. I thought they were going to use him as the thing.
They tied him to a beach chair and And that's what the little blinky things were. The scratching the film, that came from the lights. That was the thing.
Yeah, and so they created this guy, this Formaldehyde Man, which is like a character with 2 heads and 3 arms and 3 legs. And
dying to show this to Lenore because of the hardcore science that was going on. And the science in this movie was just a bunch of random knobs that the guy was just twiddling back and forth.
You said that looked like a soundboard or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, at one point it was a soundboard, I think.
Yeah.
And so, they had all these things. And then Formaldehyde Man kills the one guy, or whatever, because he bites his neck and dies.
It's great because, Dr. Frankenberry is just spouting out nonsense over all this thing. He's like, hey, we're going to use the cosmic transference of blah, 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 blah. It's just so much ketchup. It's just garbage.
Formaldehyde Man, he ran into like this, out in the middle of nowhere, ran into this guy trying to pawn something off or something.
Yeah.
Where did they get from?
Well, he was trying to, I don't know if he was just trying to do a door-to-door salesman. Well, I don't know what he was.
He was an excuse for them to be able to do
somebody
the
rip
head.
his head off.
Rip his head off, yeah. Because he couldn't rip off anyone else's head, but...
And then you see the pulsing bag in the back of the back of the neck of the disembodied head.
And then you see the head fly, and the head's like, woo!
Yeah, and then it sits there, and he's like, is there a doctor in the house?
Yeah.
And then Formaldehyde picks it up and like holds it and carries it, and it's like the camera just quickly zooms in on the head.
That reminded me a little bit of Forbidden Zone, which was around the same time.
So maybe...
Remember the head was flying around?
Mm-hmm.
It was funny.
It's just... silly stuff. It was not meant to be taken seriously. If you took this movie seriously, you're fucked up.
Well, remember at one point the little sign shows up and says, "Are you still here? It's not getting any better."
Yeah. Please, or leave now because it's not getting any better.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like when you go into some of these movies that I've watched, and I don't have quite the experience in some of this.
Oh no,
that you guys have there with that, but I go into it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to play by the rules that whatever the film is and try to live in that world. And still, with that said, this is difficult because there's so much things that you can't really. The narrative flow is kind of non-existent.
Oh yeah, there is no flow. It's awful.
There are some humorous points though. There are some laugh out loud moments.
Oh yeah.
But was it intended? I guess Nick Zedd's the only one that can really say if it was.
Probably not, but he pretty much knew from the get-go that he wasn't going to have the money to do anything.
He's like get-go, and it sounds like gecko.
So I'm sure he knew what he was going to end up with. So
that was the thing. The character was named Geeko, and but his real name was Gecko. Mm-hmm. So they just kept calling him Geeko and pissing him off with that. And
he ends up with a rather unfortunate fate, where he gets his face rearranged by Formaldehyde Man.
That's right. I forgot about the face rearranging.
Well, he got taken by Scumbellina and sort of taken over mind-wise to
he was like a double agent.
Yeah, double agent inside with Frankenberry to try to figure out what's going on so she could take everything over.
Why wasn't there a Count Chocula there too? That would have been so awesome.
What Frankenberry, Count Chocula, and what was the other one? Blueberry or
Blueberry.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were already on the fence of getting sued if they
I remember Frankenberry.
Nobody would have seen this. So
I remember Frankenberry as a child, and I think that might have been before this was made. But yeah, to your point, I don't know if the people that really made Frankenberry would have any interest in this.
Who did it? Like Post or something, or one of those Kellogg, one of those.
General Mills.
General Mills. A child in the 70s, it was there. But yeah, it was just funny. It was like, God, if you've got Frankenberry, you might as well have Count Chocula.
Yeah.
Because they come out. Those serials still come out yearly and stuff like that, once a year, and my wife always gets me one of them.
Nice. But yeah, so this was just kind of a train wreck of a film, and
that's putting it nicely.
but the train wreck would have had to been on cardboard.
Yes, everything would have been painted cardboard.
The cardboard train wreck that we watched, and we could not stop watching.
And I remember the Gecko's first victim, because he dresses up as a transvestite prostitute, and then he brings in this one guy, and that whole soundless scene where it's just weird music, and then I guess he gets him to take his clothes off, and then he gets an axe and then chops him into two props, a prop arm and a prop leg.
Right.
That was poorly.
But I think one of I couldn't tell because the lighting, but it looked like the leg might have been black and the arm might have been white.
Probably.
Which continuity.
And that dude kept looking at the camera like he was expecting somebody to tell him to do something. It's like, you could do another take to make it look better. You really could, Nick.
I think he was sort of a king of one takes, probably.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, that was the thing I noticed in the early beginning of the movie with the two doctors talking to each other, that was basically one long ass take. They didn't cut.
Right.
And it drove me nuts. And so Chris Rolls, our camera guy that we use a lot, and he gets mad when it goes too long for things. He's like, cut. And I started realizing, oh shit, you're right. We need, because he'll be like telling me personally, we need to have cut here so we can, have cuts, throughout whatever, right? Totally makes sense for A, editing purposes, and B, for the audience. You don't want to bore people.
In that case, I wasn't bored because that's when they had let the cat out, the little kitten. The kitten was wandering all over the place, and that's what I was really paying attention to.
That's what you were focused on, is the kitty.
It knocked over a little picture.
Knocked over stuff, and then, they were going to pick it up, and he's got his claws in the phone thing.
Lenore would have loved the kitten, but would not have loved that it got placed into a bag.
Well, he got pulled out of the bag, and then they just put him in the bag and zips the bag up.
And you noticed, did you notice the kitten, didn't you? The kitten was one of his quote-unquote proof experiments, and he had colored magic marker drawn on the cat.
I noticed he was colorful.
To make it look like it was supposed to be stitching.
Yeah, and that's why
that's just sad.
I was like
poor kitty.
I would say, did they add that in post? But no.
No. There's nothing added in post.
And I'm sure
we'll fix it in post. No, we won't.
Yeah. There's no fixing.
I don't know how much post there really was. But I don't think that movie was monitored by animal things.
No, PETA, no.
It was before the time of that, or even if that was in action.
I'm dying to know if it was like somebody's pet cat, like maybe it was Donna Death's cat or something. I don't know.
Probably. That's her executive producer. she provided the cat.
Yes, Frankenkitty.
Frankenkitty
would have been a great movie. Would have been a lot more fun than this one.
Tell that to Steve Brzezinski. Maybe he'll make Meowy, freaking Meowy.
Franken
Meowy. Would be his follow-up to Carousel.
Yep, exactly. All right, well, we are at that point, too.
Sounds good. So we have to score this film. And for the benefit of those who have not been in our show before, we usually score a movie 1 to 10, by which the lower the score, the better the film, and the higher the score, the stinkier it is. So think about it as Limburger cheese. If there's a lot of Limburger cheese, it's going to stink. So if there's only a little bit, not so much. So that's how it is. And so when we give our scores, we take 3 of them, we add them up, and then we figure out what was the stinkiest movie of
You can
the
also do 0.5 if
Yes,
you
you can.
need to.
No 0.75. So.
No.
It's all or nothing. Into those numbers. Okay.
There you go.
It's those numbers.
So, Mr. Moody, I'm going to go to you first.
Oh, this is a hard 10. This is a hard 10 for me, buddy.
And not getting a good hard 10,
No.
like some people would like, but it's
this isn't Miss Werewolf more than 10 kind of thing. This isn't I wish I could give it a 20.
Dave the Rock Nelson, your record is safe for now.
Yes, for now. Until Paul finds somebody else to torture us. Oh, he's got much worse. He knows. So what about you, Joe?
Well, I'm always in the frame of mind that I've never seen the worst film, but I can't imagine that I have seen anything worse than this in my life. And on that note, and I'm still thinking there might be a 10 plus down the road in my life, but to your point, I have to go 10.
Yep. 10.
And that's not easy to say, but in some ways it is, because if you experience this, you'll understand where we're coming from.
Now, I'm wondering what Paul's going to say, because he does say he saw stinky. He has bad
I'm giving
worse.
it a 1.
Oh, stop it! don't John Ward this thing.
That'll like instantly put it in like the better ratings of all the films.
Well, we'd
Something
actually
like
put it
that.
in the middle somewhere.
Yeah,
but
we'll put it
no.
in like it would be a 21 if it
No,
were.
clearly this is a 10. That's why I got this one. Mr. Moody said, find us the stinky movie for Joe. So I was like, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
Reach into my stinky movie pile and pull out a 10.
It comes out like I don't want to say gold box, maybe a poop colored box. Or
There you
something.
go.
So
Poop emoji.
far, Paul has gotten the most ones. Like actually, all of them have been 30. Like not all.
of
No, I
them.
mean I'm saying all of the ones that were 30 have been Paul's so far.
This
far.
season.
Yeah, this season.
Okay, now because you've had some 30s.
I had 130 before.
You came close though. There were a couple. Alien Prophecy should have been.
I know. No, there's been ones that are supposed to be, or should have been, but
Right,
have no.
right.
Now this one. Now, yeah, I did only have 130 because I did. No, I had two 30s.
Yeah, I was.
I
Gonna
like
say.
yeah. Last year I did 230s. I think so.
See, it's not just me.
Well, see, it seems like each season it's like it's getting close, getting more and more 30. So it's like it's.
You'd
a
think
few-
that, wouldn't you?
So, I don't know.
We've had some good movies though. I mean, Drunken Wu-Tang, that was a good one. That got a good score.
Yeah. So yeah. So but Paul's been bringing the stink this season so
Yeah,
far.
yeah.
And that's what sort of what we wanted this year is this is the 5th season, let's do a few of those. But obviously we can't, there's going to be 36 episodes, I think, or something like that, or whatever.
Spreading our stinky wings out a little bit more.
Yeah, we can't
But
do,
yeah, we got more episodes this season, so we got to fill it up.
gotta fill it up with some stink. Some shitty movies, man.
Oh yeah.
The shittier the better, right?
Well, this is definitely the cream rising to the top.
There you
or
go.
Stink into the bottom.
And we've got more Nick Zedd movies that coming. Definitely some short films because we will have them for Short Film Saturday. And yeah, so there you go.
We got enough stuff coming this year.
And from the little bit that I've heard of Nick Zedd now, from these discussions and all, I think he might have taken this as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Probably.
He would be like, wow, yeah, God, I got a 30.
Yeah, I think he was definitely rooting for a 30 if he was here.
I mean, if there are certain filmmakers that have made 30s, or whatever. Like there's Neil Breen, there's Tommy Wiseau, I'm sure has whatever. The guy who made Birdemic, has pretty bad movies and stuff. But and I'm sure we'll get more Cullen, and we'll get more
Andrew Milligan, and there's all kinds of more people showing up that we haven't even gotten into yet.
Yeah, there's some people Paul hasn't even tortured us with yet.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Yet. Because, that's the plan of the show is, I think when we first started out, it was the plan to kind of just show fun movies that we both enjoy. Some are stinkier than others or whatever, Suburban Sasquatch and stuff like that. But then it became more of like, oh man, we need to get some stinky ones up there,
Because they were always the most fun.
Yeah.
And that's why there's different types of podcasts in the videos too. You can go into other avenues for like the prestigious films in other ways, or
And we
something
do.
like that.
Yeah, we do what, Hollywood Boulevard
and
podcast.
the film freaks and stuff like that.
Criterion
Watch. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's definite places
And
and
the
ways
thing
to
is,
discuss
most people cover those kinds of films.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, there ain't very many podcasts or vidcasts out there covering Geek Maggot Bingo.
Not many.
Not
I
many.
guarantee there might be some.
Well,
and just they look for the ones that are just like you, they look for the ones that are lower. Red Letter Media, I don't think has covered Geek
don't
Maggot
think so.
Bingo yet. And it's probably because either nobody sent it to them or they just have never found it, or whatever.
It's nice to know that we can outstink Red Letter Media, Riff Tracks, Mystery Science Theater, all that stuff.
Well, that's what we're always looking for, is movies that they're not going to cover or something when we do our stinky
there's
ones.
just so many of them out there. There's a ton. And fortunately, between you and I, we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
We do. You tend to have more of the later ones. I tend to have more of the earlier ones. But between us, we have a lot.
Yeah.
So we are prepared.
And sometimes Paul likes what I get so much that he goes and buys it himself.
Yes,
you
yes,
know?
yes.
'Cause-
Much as ankle biters pained me and tormented me, I went out and bought it.
But you want it, like it's not a movie that maybe you can make other people be, you just have to turn it up really, really loud.
I call it sharing the love.
Sharing is caring.
If the titles, this was Geek Maggot Bingo, and we had a card, and we were playing in the bingo hall. Bingo.
There you go. Bingo.
Bingo.
Yes.
That's the score.
30.
30. It's got a bingo. Yes. It's got bingo.
All right.
There
Friends
you go.
forever. Bingo. It's a magical day.
It's sure is a magical day. Thank you so much for picking this, Paul. Joe, thank you so much for coming back. We hadn't had you in a while, I guess, on Indie Film Cafe.
And it's been, I know, an up and down last couple of years for you. For me, too. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
But
So we're welcoming you back, in style.
Yeah. Well, style happened with this. Yeah.
Saving Nick Zedd for you. I told you it was time, and you got so excited. I was like, "We're doing Geek Maggot Bingo." And you're like, "Oh, really?"
No, because I got excited because we mentioned this, and I saw that Nick Zedd had died, and I of course he already knew, and I wrote to him and said, you gotta do Geek Mag. You keep threatening to do it, and you just haven't done it
like
yet.
the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. At some point, it's gonna fall. It finally fell.
But I just didn't know who he would show it to because I don't think Just Jen could handle this.
No.
Joe Lynn probably could, but you tortured her with Die Hard Dracula.
I did.
But she liked it.
Well, I remember we got her with that. We got her with Santa Claus Meets the Ice Cream Bunny, and we got her with Fun in Balloon Land. So it was time to give poor Joe Lynn a break.
And Sextet.
And Sextet.
So she's had.
I think I need a Criterion or Film Freaks to wash it away.
Well, it's okay because your next film with me will be a little bit better, I think. I hope you'll like it better. If not, sorry.
It was a memorable experience.
That's standing. All right.
Well, thank you guys for checking this out. Join us next, I guess it'll be 2 weeks from now will be the next episode.
Join us for the next episode of
Indie Film Cafe. Have a good one. Bye everybody. All right, everybody.
Piggly, wiggly, wiggly.
Hootie, tootie, disco cutie.
Large, what do you say, large floppy horse penis?
I do say that from time to time.
Interesting. Wow.